I was married to Li Xun for 7 years and had occupied the central palace for 4. I was known for my utmost prudence and meticulousness, for maintaining balance in the imperial harem and presiding over grand ceremonies, and was hailed by all under heaven as a virtuous empress of her generation. On the day I lay dying, heavy snow fell. The imperial wives and consorts knelt inside the hall. Faint sobs could be heard. I strained to glance over. Li was nowhere to be seen. His Majesty hurried in from outside the hall. His shoes and socks were wet. He lifted the curtain, bringing a trace of cold air into the room. His eyes reddened as he strode quickly to the bed. "Empress, I'm here." His voice was slightly choked, and his eyes were tinged with red. I managed to force a smile, which I imagine could be considered rather hideous. After that came a long silence. I was the one who broke his silence again. Consort Ning is quiet and composed, meticulous in everything she does, and the prince under her care is obedient and sensible. She is truly worthy of being a model for the imperial harem. He stepped forward and sat down at the edge of the couch, holding my hand. "Very well, I shall do as you wish. When Chuanxi comes of age, after I pass away, Your Majesty, please let her leave the palace." A hot tear fell onto the back of my hand. What about me? Is there anything you wish to say to me?" "No. I hate him. I hate him for deceiving and betraying me. But I cannot, nor dare, say so. Though I am gone, the entire Chui clan remains behind me. The Chui clan's lineage runs deep, and the emperor's heart is unfathomable. My honor and disgrace have been bound to this all my life. In the end, I must not let it be ruined by my own hand. Then I wish Your Majesty an eternity unchanged and everlasting life and prosperity for 10,000 generations." My thoughts grew hazy, and in a daze, the hall was already filled with weeping. Wait for me in the netherworld. In our next life, we'll still be together." "No, I don't think so. In our next life, I want to stay far, far away from you." After my death, the princes bore my coffin, the noble women accompanied it, and I was buried in the imperial mausoleum. Bestowed the posthumous title Shushan, gentle, serene, warm, virtuous, and prudent. Chui Zi has completed her life. But I never imagined that I would truly obtain a second chance at life. Main text. Report from the residents of Chui, head of the cabinet. The legitimate daughter of the Chui family is gravely ill and has not regained consciousness for 3 days. I fear she will not be able to take part in the consort selection. The empress shook her head and said, "Very well. Oh well, perhaps she simply wasn't blessed with such good fortune." The rain came rather suddenly in July. By the time I left Yilanlang, it was already pouring heavily. I held up my umbrella and stepped over a stretch of water pooled on the ground. I gazed through the curtain of rain cascading from the edge of my umbrella at the puddle over there. The puddle on the ground reflected a radiant figure, skin white as snow, brows like distant mountains brushed with dark green, eyes like deep black jade, lips of the palest hue, and waist-length black hair gathered behind with nothing but a green jade hairpin. Yet even through the misty rain, it was clear that countless sorrows flowed through her eyes and brows. The rain soaked through my shoes and socks. In that moment, it felt as though I were in another lifetime. 4 days ago, when I awoke, I bore no 1,000-pound burden upon me, yet I knelt outside the main hall of my home. The night rain was icy cold, pounding against me and bringing me a sliver of clarity. Chuanxi held an umbrella as she knelt beside me. "Miss, please just yield a little. Don't hurt yourself." I was still unaware of what was happening when an argument broke out inside the main house. Father smashed a teacup. "Even if she kneels herself to death today, the day after tomorrow I will carry her corpse into the palace to atone for her offense." The lantern light was dim, and only then did I remember that this was from the year I entered the palace to be chosen as a prince's consort. At that time, I had just turned 16. The empress favored me as the principal consort of Prince Ning, Li Xun, and my father had already agreed. I knelt outside the main residence for half the night. Seeing that my father still refused to relent, I left, filled with sorrow. In the end, I indeed failed to escape a lifetime of entanglement. Chuanxi, take the umbrella away. Miss, the night rain is freezing. If anything happens to you, what will the servant do? Chuanxi, once I enter the palace, it will be a nightmare for all eternity. Just this once, I want to fight for myself. The person before me withdrew the umbrella with trembling hands, and I sent her to wait beneath the corridor. In the latter half of the night, the rain grew more violent, striking my body with enough force to hurt. The dampness seeped into me, and the chill was biting. My thoughts had already grown hazy. As I fainted, the corner of my eye caught a glimpse of the main house's door opening a crack. When I awoke again, the auspicious time for selecting the consort was drawing near. Mother's eyes were reddened with anxiety, and large tears fell one after another. Ji, when did you become so willful as to risk your life just to spite your father? Seeing my mother again would now be impossible in this lifetime. 7 years had passed, yet there would never be another day to see her again. My eyes grew hot, and tears began to fall before I could say a word. My mother lovingly drew me into her arms. Don't cry, don't cry. But did you act this way because you still had concerns in your heart? I choked back my sobs for a moment. Mother, His Highness never liked me in the first place. Once I enter the prince's residence, I'm bound to meet a tragic end. Why would you think that? Mother will surely protect you. I shook my head. She can't protect me. In the depths of the imperial palace, everything is like the moon in the sky or a reflection in the water. In the end, it all comes to nothing. Nothing can be held on to. Better never to have had this relationship in the first place than to become a bitter couple and waste away in misery. Fine, fine. If we can't enter the prince's residence, our Shi can always marry into a marquis or duke's family. I wiped away my tears. Ji seeks neither a duke's nor a marquis's household, only a good man. If that wish cannot be fulfilled, then she would rather remain unmarried for the rest of her life. I watched my mother's expression. She remained silent for a long while, and only after wiping away her tears did she say, "Enough. The family does not depend on your marriage for support. I only hope that things go smoothly for you from now on." I breathed a sigh of relief. That was good enough. I heard that Li Xun had chosen the Liu family's fourth Miss, Li Runing, as his principal consort. It took me a long while to recover. That way, I would have no further ties to the imperial palace compound. Late July. The Liu family is hosting a banquet to celebrate the opening of their residence, and an invitation was delivered to my courtyard. I chose a goose-yellow dress, pinned up my hair with a pearl hairpin, and accompanied my mother to the Liu residence for the banquet. At banquets for the womenfolk, poetry and painting always take center stage, and everyone wants to distinguish herself. But Miss Liu, the third Miss Yu, and I had no such desire. The three of us sat together in the inner courtyard. Liu Runing had just been chosen as Prince Ning's principal consort and now held the exalted status of an imperial prince's wife. Third Miss Yu had also found a suitable match earlier this year, and her marriage had been arranged. Naturally, they could not resist teasing me. Eldest Miss Chui, you are so picky. Be careful you end up an old maid. I replied with a laugh. If I never meet the right person, so what if I remain unmarried for the rest of my life? Liu Runing leaned close to my ear. Could it be that you have someone you favor? I gazed toward the men's seats from afar. Yu Chao happened to be looking toward the women's seats. His gaze had not even fallen an inch from me, so I followed his line of sight. There sat a young woman dressed all in white. The only adornment in her hair was a hibiscus blossom hairpin, which accentuated her ethereal beauty. She had slender brows, large eyes, a high, straight nose, and cool, delicate lips. She was a beauty. I looked toward her and asked, Liu Runing, which family is that young lady from? Lu Runing followed my gaze. The legitimate daughter of Zhuo Tongji, formerly of Qianliaxiang Hudong, Zhuo Tingwan. The third miss, you said with a smile. My elder brother has not fallen in love for many years, but when he finally did, it was truly earth-shattering. To ask for my hand in marriage, he knelt in the ancestral hall for 3 days and 3 nights and endured more than a dozen lashes from my father, finally persuading him to give his consent. My heart tightened. But in my previous life, Yu Chao never married, not until the day I died. The woman in white seemed to notice something. She turned her head, and her eyes met mine. A faint smile appeared on the girl's face as she gently nodded at me. I returned her smile, then let my gaze fall back to the tea table before me. What is it? I said with a smile. Nothing. It was only then that Yuzhen remembered, covering his mouth. How could I have forgotten? You and my elder brother nearly became a happy match. Look at me and my loose lips. I poured myself a cup of cold tea. Your elder brother isn't particularly close to me. Now that he's betrothed, if your future sister-in-law hears this and makes a fuss, don't blame your elder brother for being angry with you. What's laughable is that I truly once had a trace of affection for Yu Chao. In my previous life, our parents had privately discussed a marriage alliance. I once caught a distant glimpse of him, and I was delighted. Later, just as our engagement was about to be finalized, father was summoned to the palace. When he returned, he had betrothed me to the imperial family. I pleaded for half a day, but nothing changed. Later, I was confined to my quarters, and he even argued on my behalf before the assembled court. The young man I had buried deep in my heart gradually merged with the high-ranking minister before me, leaving me with a touch of melancholy. Later, I heard that he still had not married, and naively thought that he was still thinking of me. Looking back now, it was probably simply because he had not yet met his destined match. The 15th day of the 8th month, the Mid-Autumn Festival. A banquet had been arranged in the palace. The carriage came to a steady stop at the palace gates. As soon as I stepped down, I saw Yu Chao and his fiancée. Today, Zhuo Tingwan wore a lotus-colored dress, her delicate hand resting on Yu Chao's. He held on tightly with both hands, never once taking his eyes off Zhuo Tingwan, clearly cherishing her deeply. You've been watching here for quite some time. Do you find something amiss? I was very familiar with the voice behind me, and my body involuntarily stiffened, yet I had no choice but to turn around and bow. This humble subject greets His Highness Prince Ning. I lowered my head and could only see the hem of his robe. Today, he wore a white robe, its hem embroidered with auspicious clouds and gold thread. There is no need to be so formal, Miss Cui. Thank you, Your Highness. Looking at his face, I was momentarily unsure where I was. Indeed, only he could live up to those words. Standing tall like jade trees and orchids, smiling like the bright moon embraced in one's arms. In my previous life, after seeing his face, I willingly accepted the jade ruby he handed me. Besides being willing, I even felt somewhat fortunate that the young man every noble lady in the capital wanted to marry had become my husband. Or perhaps I was simply too shallow, captivated by appearances. I had once genuinely loved him. But what I believed to be a deep marital bond shattered with a single sentence from him. Those words were so hurtful that even now, whenever I think of them, everyone cuts to the bone. Empress, it was so difficult for me to encounter a woman in this lifetime to whom I could offer my true heart. Must even you stand in my way? At that moment, the bowl of pear soup I had offered was spilled all over my palace dress. The white porcelain shattered at my feet, and the pear soup dripping along my skirt hem was horribly sticky. In the end, he granted my request, but gave me only the rank of noble lady. Even so, I paid the price I deserved. At that time, I was already 3 months pregnant, yet he sent me outside the palace hall to kneel for 2 hours. But even now, I still do not believe I was in the wrong. An orphan girl enters the palace and is made a consort without bearing a son. The court is thrown into turmoil, and the imperial harem is thrown into disarray. Even the Empress Dowager, who was devoted to her Buddhist prayers, was alarmed enough to leave the worship hall and summon me to the Palace of Compassion and Tranquility, where she gave me a stern warning. The position of noble lady was something I proposed only after careful consideration. I also voiced my concerns, only granting her the title of consort after she bore a child would show that she was truly valued. But he believed that I was preventing him from being with the woman he loved. I stood to one side, my thoughts drifting for a long while. He did not leave, so I did not dare to leave. The person before me took a step toward me, startling me into retreating several steps. Are you fully recovered? Thank you for your Highness's concern. I'm almost fully recovered. I heard you knelt in the rain for half the night. Why? I didn't know how to answer. In the end, it was Li Xun who saved me. She got out of the carriage and walked briskly toward me. So you were waiting for me here. I chuckled at her. You're a little late. It doesn't matter. The banquet hasn't started yet anyway. The palace path was oppressive and seemingly endless. She and Prince Ning were betrothed, so no one could say anything about them walking together. I followed 2 paces behind them. The sound of their laughter and conversation kept drifting back to me. I think I've finally managed to escape it in this lifetime. I had a nightmare. In the dream, Yushueli's cat pounced on me. After kneeling for 2 full hours, I suffered a miscarriage scare and needed more than half a month of careful recuperation before I began to show even the slightest improvement. That fright caused me to miscarry. She merely shed a few tears and complained to Li Xun, yet the child became the bitter fruit of my supposed scheme to frame her. Simply because I had once stopped him from making her a consort, he believed I had deliberately set a trap for the woman he loved. Li Xun did not listen to my defense. Instead, he immediately made Yushueli a consort and confined me to my quarters. I awoke from my dream, the soft silk pillow leaving an imprint. Once my thoughts began to wander, I found myself thinking of more things. I remembered that the day after I stopped her from being made a consort, Yushueli had a fit of madness in my palace, repeatedly accusing me of being jealous and unable to bear seeing her favored, claiming that I had obstructed her path to becoming a consort. I punished her, making her kneel for a full 6 hours. That very night, Li Xun came to demand an explanation from me in a fury. I am the empress of the central palace, while she is merely a consort. She spoke insolently to me in front of everyone in the imperial harem. If I did not punish her, how could I command their respect? But he wouldn't listen. He thought I was deliberately giving him a hard time. Because of that punishment, the rank Li Xun had promised her was reduced from noble lady to concubine. Once, Yushueli caught a cold. The imperial physicians all said it was nothing serious, but he still stayed by her side for an entire day and night without closing his eyes. But when it came to me, a miscarriage brought on by shock, injuring her internally, he did not even say a word, let alone stay by her side in person. She remained bedridden from then on and passed away embittered after little more than 2 months. How could she not be heartbroken when all her sincere devotion came to nothing? Autumn passed, and winter arrived. On the day of the first snow, the decree appointing Li Xun as princess consort of Prince Ning spread throughout the various residences. Everything had finally been settled. I found Yushueli at the city gate tower. In my previous life, I once happened to hear Li Xun mention that Yushueli was an orphan, with both parents dead. She made a living on her own, and her life was truly miserable. I held an umbrella and stood with Chuanxi beneath the large tree at the city gate. The wind and snow stung my eyes, making them ache. She had set up a tea stall, and her hair was covered in ice and snow. She wore coarse hemp clothing, and even the hairpin holding up her hair was carved from wood rough and unpolished. Her smile was serene, making it especially striking against the snowy day. She bore not the slightest resemblance to the arrogant, overbearing woman I remembered. The snow gradually grew heavier, and the people in the streets became sparse. She packed up her stall, and I sent Chuanxi to follow her from a distance. It was in a village 3 li outside the city. To the right was a barren mountain, rarely visited by anyone. Chuanxi knocked on her door and handed her 5 taels of silver, saying that he was looking for a fresh medicinal herb for her mother. Li looked at the money, then remembered that the medicinal herbs were common and could be found on the barren mountain. Seeing that it was still early, she asked Chuanxi to add another 5 taels, and she would go pick them. Chuanxi nodded and watched her figure gradually disappear into the distance. I went up the mountain ahead of her. The hem of my skirt became stained with mud, and I stood by the roadside waiting for her. Half an hour later, she reached the mountainside. The sky had already begun to darken. When I saw her, I said a word. The plant growing on this cliff is soul-severing grass. The snow is so heavy that it's hard to see clearly. Miss, could you help me take a look? My smile was sincere. She approached suspiciously. Seeing that I was dressed plainly, she assumed I was also a female physician from some family who had come to gather herbs. The snow began to fall more heavily, fluttering through the air like goose feathers. The moment she bent over, the stone in my hand struck the back of her head. Wincing in pain, she tried to turn around. I struck her again with all my strength. Blood began to seep out, and she collapsed to the ground. Afraid she might not be completely dead, I kept striking her with the stone until her skull shattered. Certain she would never survive, I abandoned her body at the foot of the barren mountain. The snow was still falling, whipped up by the wind. For a moment, I couldn't tell whether the joy of having my great vengeance was finally achieved, or whether the snow-laden wind was what made my face ache. Anyway, I shed tears. At the foot of the mountain stood a man, his dark robes blending into the night. He held a paper umbrella, and his face was impossible to make out. As I passed him, he extended his hand, a silk handkerchief in it. In the utterly silent snowy night, his low voice seemed to pour directly into my ear, gradually becoming clear. Wipe them away. My heart began pounding violently. For a moment, it seemed as though it would leap out of my throat. Wen Qian, Assistant Censor-in-Chief. In my previous life, because I was too rigid and inflexible and had also been granted the authority to remonstrate with all the officials, I often enraged Li Xun to the point of stamping his feet. What I heard him say most often was, that Wen Qian is simply an ungrateful wretch. He once paid his respects to me at the Grand Court audience ceremony. Because of Li Xun, I paid particular attention to him and exchanged a few words with him about everyday matters. Even then, I thought his voice was deep and resonant, leaving an unforgettable impression on anyone who heard it. I tightened my grip on the silver hairpin hidden in my sleeve, only to hear him speak again. Don't worry. Once you enter the mountain, I'll keep watch here. Besides, I've already checked the area, there's no one nearby, and I won't tell anyone either. I didn't trust him. I was merely contemplating how to kill him when he wasn't paying attention. The person before me suddenly leaned down to my ear. I also think, Your Highness, that you took your revenge beautifully. The silver hairpin slipped from my sleeve and fell to the ground, while a sudden bitterness spread throughout my body. I couldn't stop myself from choking back 2 sobs, and I accepted his silk handkerchief, saying, Thank you. On the day of the Lantern Festival, the city held a lantern fair. I led Chuanxi through the crowds, thoroughly enjoying ourselves. At the corner of the street, we ran into Wen Qian. He had set up a small stall there, displaying several lanterns. Only then did I remember that Wen Qian had not yet made the honors list and had no official distinction to his name. He was not an important court official, but merely a commoner. Meeting Miss Cui here is truly fate. Since it is the Lantern Festival today, and I see that you have nothing in your hands, I shall give you this lotus lantern, so that you may share in the festive cheer. The person before me held out a lantern. The lotus lantern was crafted with exquisite realism, and 2 drops of water seemed to cling to its pink and white petals. This. Before I could finish speaking, I was interrupted. Ge. I raised my eyes to look at the person who had called me. Lu Rining's face was full of smiles. Standing beside her was Li Xun, holding 2 lanterns in his hands, one shaped like a lotus and the other like a rabbit. I gave a shallow bow. Your humble daughter pays her respects to His Highness Prince Ning. There is no need for such formalities. Lu Runing came forward with a grin and linked arms with me. Just as I thought. Every year during the Lantern Festival, you love going out to join in the festivities. This time, I searched for you for quite a while but couldn't find you. Before I could respond, Li Xun spoke first. Miss Cui, do you enjoy lively gatherings? Of course I do. Ge Yun Yen Yen and I are close friends. Among the three of us, Ge is by far the liveliest. Li Xun did not answer, as if deep in thought. After a moment, he held out the rabbit lantern in his hand to me. This rabbit lantern should suit Miss Cui's liking. I shall part with it reluctantly and present it to you, Miss Cui. Lu Runing's expression changed in an instant, and she furrowed her brows slightly. I gazed at her face and let out a soft chuckle. Thank you for His Highness's kindness, but I do not like rabbit lanterns. Young Master Wen's lotus lantern is exquisitely crafted, and I have already accepted it. I truly cannot take His Highness's lantern as well. I turned and accepted the lotus lantern from Wen Qian's hands. Wen Qian's face, dark as a deep pool, seemed to see moonlight in an instant, breaking into a smile as he glanced at Li Xun across me and Lu Runing. In that case, I have overstepped. A smile returned to Lu Runing's face as she teased. Perhaps His Highness the Prince doesn't know, but the animal Z dislikes most is the rabbit. Whether alive or dead, she won't touch it at all, not even pastries or desserts shaped like rabbits. I said to Wen Qian with a smile, Young Master Wen, you are very skilled. I like this lotus lantern very much, Chuanxi. Chuanxi sensibly took out his purse, weighed out 2 taels of silver, and handed them to Wen Qian. I linked arms with Lu Runing and continued strolling ahead. Li Xun seemed to remain standing where he was, without moving an inch. Lu Runing's smile faded. I feel that Prince Ning isn't quite right. He seems to have some sort of feelings for you. In any case, you should stay on your guard. From what I've observed of him these past few days, whatever he wants, he'll use every means at his disposal to obtain. If you don't feel the same way, you'd better start thinking of a way to deal with it. Why do you say that? He's not a good man. What about you? What this lady seeks is wealth and glory. Naturally, I don't care whether he's a good man. At that moment, Chuanxi stepped forward and interrupted our conversation. Miss, young Master Wen did not accept it. I turned around in surprise, and Wen Qian smiled at me for a brief moment from across the crowd. The lotus lantern in my hand was glowing faintly, leaving my thoughts muddled. Spring arrived in March, and the peach blossoms were in full bloom. I accompanied my mother to Qianfu Temple to worship Buddha. Upon entering the temple grounds, I immediately spotted Wen Qian. He stood at the foot of the steps in front of the temple hall, while the lush branches and leaves of an ancient tree shielded him from a ray of sunlight. He had set up a little stall again, selling insect-repellent sachets. I was rather wary. Ever since he caught me in that scene on the desolate mountain, he seemed to be appearing before me more and more frequently. I walked past his stall and casually picked up a dark green bamboo sachet. Young Master Wen, how come you're selling sachets again? What a coincidence, Miss Cui. Well, I'm just an ordinary commoner, and I have to make a living too, don't I? Besides, I need to save up for the money to marry a wife. My expression darkened. Young Master Wen, you promised me. Wen Qian paused for a moment, then said with a smile, Today is only the second time I've met Miss Cui. I don't recall promising Miss Cui anything the last time. I was somewhat surprised as well, and only laughed after a long while. Then I wish you, young Master Wen, great success in your business. There are many mosquitoes on spring nights. Since we have met, we must be fated to do so. I shall present this sachet to you, Miss Cui. May it keep you free from mosquitoes at night and grant you sweet dreams every day. What he held out was a pink sachet edged with silver thread. Embroidered in the center was a peach blossom on the verge of blooming, making it especially delightful. Which embroidery workshop made this sachet, young Master Wen? It is remarkably exquisite. He glanced at the other sachets on the stall. Those were naturally made by an embroidery workshop. The one in the young lady's hand, however, was made personally by Wen in his spare time and is meant for someone fated to receive it. I never expected young Master Wen to have such a skill as well. In that case, thank you. In the distance, I heard my mother calling. I gave Wen Qian a courteous bow and jogged off to find her. Today, after my mother finished praying to Buddha, she had me draw a fortune stick, a marriage fortune. Unable to refuse her, I drew one at random and handed it to the person in charge. The person in charge glanced at the interpretation and let out a laugh. Miss Cui has drawn an auspicious fortune stick, indicating that the destined person has already arrived at her side. Though she cannot yet see clearly, may she soon realize it and find a blessed match. My mother was so delighted that she donated quite a bit more for incense offerings. I turned the fortune stick in my hand over and over, but there was only one line. Suddenly turning back, I found that person there, in the dimly lit distance. At the end of March, misty rain shrouded the world. My elder brother returned home from Li Xun Academy. He brought back a handsome young nobleman, and for a while, the maids gathered outside the front courtyard, their faces flushed like peach blossoms. It was at this moment that Chuanxi and I arrived at the front courtyard. Crossing the front courtyard, I looked at the young man in white sitting in the front hall and instantly felt utterly powerless, as if struck by lightning. Wen Qian, it was him again. I absolutely would not believe that he didn't know Cui Songbai was my elder brother. In our previous lives, the two of them served as officials in the same court. According to my brother, he greatly valued Wen Qian's talent and upright, incorruptible character. My elder brother saw me from a long way off. Come here quickly. Let me introduce you to someone. I forced a smile after much effort, though my expression was unpleasant, and stepped inside. Greetings, brother. Greetings, young master. This is young Master Wen Qian. His carriage ran into a bit of trouble just outside the city, and young Master Wen kindly came to our aid. We exchanged a few words and unexpectedly found ourselves quite congenial. I made a mental comment to myself, my elder brother had probably been deceived by him. Wen Qian was a rather calculating person. I smiled and said, "In that case, thank you very much for your assistance, young Master Wen." I did not linger and returned to my room through the drizzle. At dinner time, Wen Qian was still there. I thought nothing of it. He had helped my elder brother, so it was hardly surprising that my brother had asked him to stay for a simple meal. After taking our seats, father exchanged a few more words with him and seemed to admire him quite a bit as well. I stood beside him with a forced smile, my face aching from smiling for so long. When Wen Qian still showed no intention of leaving, I could bear it no longer and spoke up to remind him. It is getting late. I believe young Master Wen should be heading home as well. You shouldn't keep your parents waiting. Only then did father come back to his senses. Indeed, indeed. I was remiss in my consideration. It is getting late, and we haven't had nearly enough time to enjoy ourselves today. Come visit our home again another day, and we can have a long heart-to-heart talk. Ha 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 ha. Wen Qian's expression suddenly changed. He lowered his head slightly, a strained smile appearing on his face. Uncle may not know this, but your nephew has neither parents nor wife or children to tie him down. Today truly is the happiest day I've had in all these years. With that, I shall take my leave. However, I'll usually be busy making a living. After all, even one person needs to put food on the table, doesn't he? I'm afraid I won't have many opportunities to visit your residence again. I was rendered speechless. It wasn't only me, even my father and elder brother had a momentary blank look on their faces. Once he came to his senses, my elder brother glared at me with considerable reproach, leaving me momentarily at a loss for words. My father sent me away on some pretext. Realizing that he had misspoken, he also felt rather uneasy. I do not know what happened afterward. I only know that the next day, when I stepped out of the courtyard, Wen Qian was painting with my elder brother in the pavilion in the rear courtyard. The slightest trace of guilt in me vanished completely. Wen Qian brazenly moved into my home just like that. These past few days, because Wen Qian was staying with me, I rarely left my room. 5 days later, he came through the rain. At that moment, I was sitting in the pavilion in the courtyard, brewing tea and admiring the rain. He didn't stand on ceremony. He sat down at his ease, poured himself a cup of tea, and only spoke after savoring it. Miss Cui, are you avoiding me? I refilled my cup before responding unhurriedly. Ge simply doesn't understand what young Master Wen is trying to do. By my calculations, this year should have been the year young Master Wen came first in the imperial examination, entered the court as an official, and enjoyed a smooth political career, rising to the 5th rank within 3 years, becoming an important court official within 5, and taking charge of overseeing all the officials. I shot him a glance, only to see him holding his teacup and taking small sips from it. When he heard something he particularly agreed with, he even nodded, indicating that everything I said was absolutely correct. I was somewhat annoyed. Yet this year, young Master Wen did not take the imperial examination. Instead, he has kept causing trouble for my family. Why is that? Cause trouble for your family? Why would you say that, miss? Ever since we parted in the desolate mountains, young Master Wen has appeared before me from time to time. Now he has even charmed my father and elder brother into letting you reside in the household. The hand lowering his teacup paused. I thought you could tell that I was trying to win their favor. My face was filled with confusion. Why are you trying so hard to please them? But then he changed the subject and asked about Li Xun. Don't you think His Highness Prince Ning seems somewhat strange in this life? I was taken aback. I didn't expect even you to notice. Li Xun is an extremely cautious person, especially at a time like this, when the crown prince has not yet been appointed. On his left, he has His Highness Prince Jin, with his many military achievements. On his right, he has his own elder brother, Prince Qing, watching him like a tiger eyeing its prey. In theory, he should be devoting all his efforts to dealing with the two of them at this point, but instead, he is indulging in romantic attachments, and he seems to have feelings for you that are more than ordinary. Was it the same in your previous life, before you entered the prince's residence as his consort? I shook my head. Back then, I spent most of my time secluded in my boudoir. At most, I would have small gatherings with my sisters, so I had never met him before we married. In your previous life, I often heard that the emperor and empress were deeply devoted to each other and had a very strong bond. But after seeing the choice you made in this life, I realized that the rumors from your previous life could not be taken as truth. The spring rain fell a little more heavily. Holding my teacup, I rose to my feet. Outside the pavilion, the hibiscus had gathered several raindrops on its pink stamens. After a long while, when the raindrops gathered into a single droplet, broke free of the petals, and dissolved into the soil, I felt an endless loneliness. Perhaps I felt that no one could understand the grievances I had suffered in my previous life. Or perhaps I had finally encountered someone who still remembered everything from that life, and my emotions overwhelmed me for a moment. 1.5 years after entering the prince's residence, I gave birth to a daughter. At the thought of this, I formed a faint smile. She was adorable. When she had just been born, she was tiny, soft, and tenderly pink. I didn't even dare hold her too tightly. She was bestowed the name Zhaohua, and when she was 8 months old, she called me mother consort for the first time. That was the only thing worth remembering from my previous life. I couldn't help tightening my grip on the teacup in my hand. When I was joyfully preparing for her first birthday celebration, she was poisoned and died. It was less than 10 days before her first birthday. She breathed her last in my arms, her face turning purple. She was wearing her favorite pink dress, and blood stained the front of it. At that time, I simply sat blankly on the floor. By the time he arrived, Zhao Hua had already breathed her last. I wept and begged him to investigate thoroughly, but it was already a critical moment in the struggle for the succession, and he had no time to investigate. The people around him had more important things to do. She was only a young princess, after all. Later, a maid was hastily beaten to death, and the matter was brought to an end. At the time, I fell seriously ill from excessive worry. He only told me that the investigation had uncovered the culprit and that the person had been beaten to death. I had no one I could rely on besides Chuanxi, but Chuanxi made inquiries again and again, and everyone throughout the entire manor gave the same account. I gave a bitter laugh. What deep affection between husband and wife! What profound feelings! He merely valued the fact that I managed my household well. He did not meet the woman he truly loved until after he had accomplished his great ambition. The year before I left, I was carrying my second child. I imagine you all know that when the empress conceived, the whole realm celebrated. A voice sounded from behind me. Yes, His Majesty was overjoyed at the time, but only a few months later, word came that the empress had miscarried from grieving too deeply for the late Princess Zhao Hua. And afterward, the empress fell gravely ill and passed away, and the entire nation mourned, right? Yes. It wasn't a critical illness. The miscarriage and shock injured her internally, and her excessive grief and overwhelming worry left her beyond help. When I was 2 months pregnant, he brought Li back. He treated her sincerely and wanted to make her a consort, clashing with the court officials for over a month. The Empress Dowager was angered into a headache, and my father and elder brother also wrote to me, asking me to advise him. When I was 3 months pregnant, the pressure from all 3 sides left me unable to rest day after day. I went to him and voiced my concerns. He struck me with a white porcelain bowl, then made me kneel for 2 hours. Injured the fetus. The next day, Li collided with me, so I punished her, but he thought I was abusing my authority to take revenge. During the quarrel, my lower back struck the corner of a table, and I spent over half a month recovering before I could leave Kongning Palace. The first time I went out, I ran into Li. Her cat pounced on me, and I fell to the ground while trying to dodge it, resulting in a miscarriage. Yet he never punished her. After she cried a few tears, it became a matter of my reaping what I had sown. She was made a consort, while I was confined to the palace. Until the day I died, I never set foot outside Kongning Palace again. The spring rain lets up intermittently as the night deepens. The person behind me finally asked after a long while, "Do you hate me?" I replied with a smile, "How could I not hate him? Do you want to kill him?" "Of course I do. I've thought of many ways, but so far, there's been no solution that satisfies both sides. No matter what, I'd inevitably drag the entire Chui family into it, but I don't want to. I'll help you." I turned my head back in bewilderment. Why? The person before me turned and left the pavilion, and I saw him wave his hand as he walked away. He probably couldn't stand him either. At the beginning of April, Lu Runing entered Prince Ning's residence and became the esteemed Princess Ning. That very night, Li Xun climbed over the wall and entered my courtyard. I was tending to the flowers and plants in the courtyard and had just cut a sprig of golden splashed peach blossom when he appeared before me. His eyes were red, as glaring as the bright red wedding robes he wore. He took a big stride forward, squeezing my wrist until it hurt. "It should have been you, why isn't it you?" The air was thick with the smell of alcohol. He was drunk. I tightened my grip on the flower shears, hesitating over whether to finish him off with a single snip while I had the chance. But being in the inner residence of the Chui Manor, I endured it once again. "What is His Highness talking about?" I don't understand. I saw that he continued murmuring the same sentence. It should have been yours, Z. Why wasn't it you? I did not respond, merely looking at him coldly. It's all right, it's all right. Just wait until tomorrow, when I ask the Empress Dowager to make you my secondary consort. You will still have the status of Empress. Then, I interrupted him. Your Highness must be joking. I don't even care to be your principal consort, so how could I possibly become your secondary consort? At those words, he became agitated, his eyes seeming to brim with tears about to spill over, and his grip on my wrist tightened further. Why? Why, GE? Someone pushed open the gate outside the courtyard. The faint light from the lantern in his hand illuminated the ground by his feet as he walked step by step toward Li Xun. He pried Li Xun's hand away and pulled me behind him. Li Xun stared at his face, then flicked his sleeve and placed his hands behind his back. Is that you? Wen Qian. Yes, it's me. On the night of your wedding, if you enter a young woman's boudoir, word of it could ruin Miss Chui's reputation. Now that we've reached this critical stage, both Prince Cheng and Prince Jean are probably hoping you'll make one wrong move and leave them something to use against you. Li Xun narrowed his eyes slightly. Are you threatening me? How could I? You are a prince of the highest rank and perhaps the future ruler of this realm. Who could possibly threaten you? By the way, when I returned from outside the residence just now, I saw your guard standing by the wall, seemingly very anxious and pacing back and forth. I imagine he has found out what you wanted to know. Why don't you go and see? Li Xun seemed to recall something and pointed at Wen Qian, laughing angrily twice. Well done, Wen Qian. Very well done. Watching the newcomer disappear before my eyes, I sighed. Why bother? You'll have to enter the court and serve as an official eventually. Making an enemy of him now will do you no good. Wen Qian spread his hands. Then don't become an official. Besides, the realm has yet to be settled, and it is still unknown whose the imperial throne will be. I picked up the gold-flecked green peach blossom lying on the ground and voiced the doubt in my heart. You are brimming with talent. Wouldn't it be a waste if you didn't become an official? It isn't worth it. Yet he said nothing, instead taking my reddened wrist and asking with a frown, Does it hurt? Not anymore. Even if it doesn't hurt, you still need medicine. With that, he took a small white porcelain jar from his robe. His fingertips picked up a little of the cold ointment and gently brushed it onto my wrist. At that moment, my heart trembled slightly. In early May, my elder brother left the capital, and Wen Qian also moved out of the Chui residence. Perhaps I had grown accustomed to seeing him around the residence these past days, and I couldn't adjust all at once. I am standing in the pavilion by the pond, feeding the fish. Yet what I am thinking about is how the white lotuses filling the pond are budding and gathering their strength, waiting only a little longer before they bloom one after another. By then, the entire courtyard will be filled with the fragrance of lotus blossoms. It's just a pity that Wen Qian didn't get to see it. I wonder how he has been these past few days. In the torrential June rain, Father was taking a day off, and Wen Qian came to the residence to pay his respects. I only learned the news as he was about to leave. Leading Chuanxi and holding an umbrella, I hurried to meet him at the entrance to the residence. He was still dressed all in white, holding an umbrella as he looked at me and smiled through the rain. Before seeing him, I had so many questions I wanted to ask. But when I saw him, I could only call out, "Young Master Wen," unable to say all that was in my heart. He approached me, lowered his head, and whispered in my ear, "At last I've seen Miss Chui. Now my longing has been eased." Making my face flush crimson, "Wait for my signal, and then we'll make our move." Then he looked up, stared at my flushed face in astonishment for a moment, and left the residence with a smile. The autumn hunt in September. Everything came to an end. Before the autumn hunt, I received a letter from Li Xun. I waited for Li Xun in the mountains during the autumn hunt. Looking at his face, I smiled faintly and called out, "Prince." The voice was infinitely tender and captivating, stirring a heart full of affection in anyone who heard it. Li Xun was bewitched by my sudden show of affection and followed me step by step into the trap. Following the instructions in the letter, I led Li Xun to an uninhabited place in the back mountains. The trap clamped down on his foot, and Li Xun was injured and fell to the ground. I moved away from him step by step until a wave of warmth enveloped me from behind, accompanied by the rich, sweet fragrance of osmanthus. I knew without turning around that it was Li Xun. He held a bow in his hand. Taking my hand in his, he drew the bow, his voice echoing beside my ear. "Watch closely." The arrow tore through the autumn wind, stirred up fallen leaves, and pierced Li Xun's chest. He raised his head in shock. The arrow grew infinitely larger in his eyes, and his face remained full of disbelief until the moment of his death. Tears covered my face, and my hands trembled slightly. Li Xun stood quietly beside me. When Lu Runing entered from outside the hunting grounds, she was so shocked by the scene before her that her mouth fell open. But moments later, she composed herself, hurried to Li Xun's corpse, pulled out the feathered arrow, and threw it into the bottomless cliff behind her. With reddened eyes and tears covering her face, she looked at me and said, "Go!" Li Xun pulled me into his arms. "Let's go." The golden sunset bathed me in its light, and all the hatred filling my heart, all the resentment from my past life, vanished beneath its warmth. 3 days later, Father hurried home from the imperial palace. He kept sighing throughout dinner. Unable to hold back, Mother asked him a couple of questions, and Father seemed to have found an outlet, telling us everything. Prince Ning disappeared during the autumn hunt. After searching for 3 days without finding any trace of him, Princess Ning cried until she could no longer see. Later, the princess suddenly remembered that the prince had said he was going to the dangerous beast area to hunt a tiger and make a fur cloak for His Majesty as a birthday gift. Only then did His Majesty send people to the dangerous beast area. They searched for half a day before finding him. Alas, he had been mauled beyond recognition by wild beasts, and not a single part of his remains was intact. If not for the dragon-patterned jade pendant he wore, who would have believed it was the prince? My grip on the bamboo chopsticks loosened slightly. A look of pity and relief mingled on my mother's face. Princess Ning is truly pitiful. She's only been married for less than half a year. How will she get through the days ahead? Thank goodness it wasn't Z back then. Otherwise, my heart truly would have broken from the pain. I set down the bamboo chopsticks and gently soothed my mother. My father shook his head. Yes, what a pity. However, Princess Ning fainted from crying in the palace hall. Only after His Majesty summoned the imperial physician did they learn that Princess Ning had been pregnant for over a month. At least she has left behind an heir. We can only hope that Princess Ning takes good care of herself. Only then did I speak. I want to go see Ru Ning. My father was moved to compassion and nodded. You and the princess consort were close back when you were both unmarried. It would be good for you to go see her and offer her plenty of comfort. Tell her to take good care of herself. The next day, I entered Prince Ning's residence and followed the maid to the princess consort's main hall. Every plant and tree here was just as it had been in my previous life. I had spent 3 years here, burying countless resentments in this place. Ru Ning lay on the bed, her face pale. She dismissed the maids, leaving me alone with her for a private conversation. Don't worry about me. How could I convince people that I'm truly heartbroken if I didn't cry a few times? My heart ached, and large tears rolled down my cheeks. I'm sorry. What are you talking about? She lowered her voice again and again. You must have had your reasons for doing this. You're gentle by nature, so taking this step must mean he bullied you and pushed you too far. I was crying uncontrollably and couldn't respond. Instead, she took out a handkerchief and comforted me. Don't cry. You don't need to feel sorry toward me. Look at me, I have money and power now, and a precious imperial grandchild in my belly. No one dares bully me, and His Majesty values my child as well. My wish has come true. She made me laugh for a moment. She had never changed. How could I have ended up at odds with her in my previous life? Love truly harms both others and oneself. The following year, the new emperor ascended the throne and specially reopened the imperial examinations. Wen Qian performed steadily and came first at once. On the day the results were posted, he was surrounded by ranks of officials, each eager to claim him as an esteemed son-in-law. My father also went to view the results. Sitting inside his carriage, he brushed aside the curtain and gazed at the clamorous crowd, a smile on his face. Wen Qian's eyes darted about rapidly, and the moment he spotted my father's carriage, he shouted, "Father-in-law, save me!" The father was extremely surprised. Seeing Wen Qian continuously wave at him, he pointed at himself in astonishment and uttered, "Me?" When the officials saw that it was Lord Cui, the current Grand Secretary, who could compete with him for such a fine son-in-law? Who would dare compete with him for such a fine son-in-law? Only then did they let the man go. Wen Qian climbed into the carriage, panting heavily. Once seated, he leisurely poured himself a cup of iced tea. Only when the carriage arrived at the Cui residence did he bow and offer his thanks. "Many thanks to Uncle Cui for rescuing your nephew from his sea of suffering. His Majesty values talent, and I shamelessly begged him to grant me a residence, which is right next door. Tomorrow is an auspicious day. Your nephew will certainly bring the betrothal gifts and formally propose marriage." Having said that, he swaggered into the residence next door under his father's sidelong glance, casually shutting the door behind him. His father looked at the attendant beside him, utterly bewildered. Did I agree to let him come and propose marriage? Then he burst out laughing. That mischievous boy. After night fell, father summoned me to the main hall. They kept mentioning Wen Qian, praising his exceptional talent and his winning first place, while watching my expression. Only after seeing that I showed no displeasure did they get to the main point. "What does C think of Qian?" A faint smile appeared on my face. "My daughter also thinks that young Master Wen has a bright future and is an upright person. Surely, he must be a good match." Father and mother exchanged a smile, their expressions showing considerable satisfaction. The following day, Wen Qian brought the betrothal letter and fine gifts, and asked a matchmaker to call on the family to propose marriage. Father had just taken his birthday card when the main gate was suddenly thrown open. My elder brother, his face dark with anger and his hair crown disheveled, hurried in, pointing at Wen Qian and spitting as he ranted. "You damned dog! I treated you like a brother. Day after day, you called me elder brother this and elder brother that, yet you ungrateful cur repaid my kindness by coveting my sister. I'll beat you to death, you mangy dog." In the end, Wen Qian shamelessly called him elder brother several times and exhausted every flattering word he could think of. Only then did my elder brother nod, allowing them to successfully exchange betrothal papers. Before long, it was March of the following year. The Cui family married off their daughter, while the Wen family welcomed a wife. I rose at around midnight, still drowsy as I let the matrons fuss over me. Once the bright red wedding dress was put on, festivity colored the corners of my brows. The matron remarked with a smile, "Miss, this outfit of yours is embroidered beautifully. The woven gold concentric lotuses look so lifelike." I lowered my head to take a glance, my eyes brimming with a smile. This was not embroidered by me, it was embroidered by my husband. The matchmaker did not know how to respond for a moment, her cheeks flushing as she finally managed to say stiffly, "Very good, very good." With my hand resting on Wen Qian's, I paid respects to heaven and earth and to our parents. The wedding ceremony was complete. He lifted the red bridal veil, a trace of drunkenness still lingering on his face, lending it a faint flush as his eyes gazed into my dark ones. My lady. The wedding robe slipped away, the wedding night arrived. The wild wind ceased, and the happy couple became one. Extra. My lady once asked me what had happened to me in my previous life. I said that the realm would be peaceful and secure for 100 years. But I would not tell her that I died in the 3rd year after she passed away in her previous life, so I did not know what happened in the end. What I did know, I would not tell her either, lest I cause her needless worry. For instance, after she passed away, Li Xun cancelled morning court for 10 days and kept vigil by her coffin every day. For example, after she left, Lord Cui resigned from office, Madame Cui fell gravely ill, and Songbai died after hurling himself against a pillar. Every word was meant to seek justice for her. For example, 3 months after she left, Li Xun executed the demon consort, personally cutting her down with his sword. For example, after she left, Li Xun became obsessed with the arts of Taoism, abandoning the realm and its people to their suffering. In my previous life, I learned the true cause of her death only when Songbai revealed it in a drunken stupor. At the time, I felt mostly sorrow, tinged with a trace of heartache. I still remember the first time I saw her. She sat upright in the place of honor, dressed in the empress's ceremonial robes, her voice slightly soft and sweet. I looked up at her, dark brows, slender and arched, almond-shaped eyes, bright with moisture, a high, straight nose, and a small, delicate mouth. In that lifetime, I saw her only once. Later, having died unjustly and been denied rebirth, heaven, in its benevolence, allowed me to see her once more. I did not see her face. Even through the vast sea of people, I recognized her from her silhouette alone. I followed her up the barren mountain and watched her kill consortly with her own hand. When I saw her expression change at the sound of my voice, I ventured a tentative question. Her faintly choked voice pierced my eardrums. Time and again, I wanted to give her the things I had put the most heart into, because she was worth it, she alone was worth it. She said she wanted revenge, so I began making plans. I entered Prince Jin's residence and pledged my allegiance, wanting only to help her escape unscathed. Li Xun's death meant that she had avenged her great enemy, and that my loyalty had been proven. Prince Jin asked me what I wanted. I said I wanted to stand by her side openly and honorably. I began planning my life. I would take the imperial examinations and come first in the rankings. Every step was so that she would not have to enter my household in disgrace, and so that I could give her a bright future. Prince Jin became emperor. When she saw me before the throne, her face was full of teasing. Tell me, what is it you desire? Then grant me a residence right next door to Chief Minister Cui's. Fortunately, I had not offended her. On our wedding night, her eyes were filled with nothing but me. Fortunately, my wish had been fulfilled. What are you thinking about? I've called you several times. The person before me gradually came into focus, her lips slightly pursed, her voice soft and sweet. I set down the book in my hand, drew her onto my lap, and wrapped my arms around her. Her sweet lips were still chattering away, so I lowered my head and gently silenced them with a kiss. Hee, Daddy is naughty, taking advantage of Mommy in broad daylight. The little girl was clever and charming. She planted one hand on her hip while repeatedly dragging the index finger of her other raised hand lightly across her cheek. What do you mean, being frivolous? Your father isn't some lecherous rogue. Your mother is mine to begin with. I can kiss her whenever I want. The person in my arms gave me a coy little push, her face filled with laughter. The story has come to an end. Thank you all for your companionship. See you in the next one.